This gentleman was born in Maryland and grew up in San Diego. United States. Do that again. He was a United States Marine Corps intelligence specialist and drill instructor. And a retired union journeyman electrician and foreman. And he recently retired to become a professional network marketer. A fun fact about this guy, he was a former lead singer in a rock band in Las Vegas, Nevada. Ladies and gentlemen, Vinnie AMT.
At 7 years old, I stood in shock as I watched my brother get shot in the face. The reason? Because we were hungry. Now back then, hunger was a painful and sad thing for me. But what I've learned is that hunger can also be a very positive thing as well. When I was young, we were very poor, and food was hard to come by. And my brother and I would go many nights to bed hungry. And how many of you have had that Snickers bar, it's so satisfying kind of hunger? Yeah? Well, it wasn't like that. It was a gut-wrenching kind of hunger. A hunger that doubles you over in pain, that stabs you in the temple like an ice pick from the pain of the headaches. And a hunger that made you so weak it was hard to stand, much less go outside and play like a normal 7-year-old would do. Now, the withholding of food also became a punishment by my parents for bad behavior. And my brother and I would sometimes go 2 or 3 days without eating. But that was normal in my household. We were always hungry. Now, we lived during those years in Maryland, out in the sticks as some people might call it. So punishments like this pretty much went unnoticed by our neighbors because houses were spread out pretty far back then. And the summer times were the worst. My parents would lock us outside when they went to work, so we had no way to get food. And the schools were closed then too, so there was no free meals for us. So my brother and I would come up with plans on how to sneak food. Now, some plans were good, and other plans, well, that leads me back to the day my brother got shot in the face. My brother was the brawn between the two of us, and I was always the brains. My brother would come up with ideas on how to get food, but it was up to me to come up with a plan. And this plan was awesome. We were hungry and we were going to eat this day. I was sure of it in my mind. We had a neighbor who lived about a mile or so away from us, an old tobacco farmer, a mean old grouchy guy with a bad reputation. We used to always hear him shooting off his shotgun at one thing or another. Now back then there was an urban legend that old farmers used to pack their shotgun shells with a mixture of rock salt and fatback to scare away the birds and the wild animals that would come into the fields. Now if you don't know what fatback is, I can describe it to you. It's kind of like bacon. It's little pieces of pig fat that's used for cooking. And this farmer was one of those that was known to use this in his shotgun shells. But we were hungry. Now, on this farmer's property next to his tobacco barn was this little garden. And in this garden, he grew some of the biggest tomatoes that I had ever seen in my life. So the plan was to sneak into his garden, steal a few tomatoes so we could eat and get away, and it was all good. The plan was perfect, and we were set. Now, our little Hunger Games started off pretty well. Our parents locked us outside as normal, and we waited for them to leave. And once they left, we were off, straight through the woods and right up to the edge of his tobacco field. Now, this took us about an hour or so because, we were kind of weak from not eating. But we could see the barn, and it was about 300 miles away, right across from right over the tobacco field, and we could see the little garden. So we snuck through the tobacco field as quietly as we could, and we got right up to the edge of that garden. And we could see the tomatoes, but we could also hear that the farmer was working in his barn. Now, we nearly left because we were scared, but we were hungry too. So we argued with each other for a few seconds. So the new plan was to run as fast as we could, grab a few tomatoes, and take off back towards the field and back home before he even knew. We could do this, right? So we took off running through the garden, and we ran up to those tomato plants, and we each grabbed 2 of them, the biggest ones we could find. But the farmer heard us, and he came running out of his barn with a shotgun. And I looked at my brother, and we just started running. And all I could hear, it sounded like a Western movie. It was like, "Stop, or I'll shoot." And I looked over at my brother, and I could tell he was going to stop. And I yelled at him, I said, "No, David, don't stop." But it was too late. All I could hear was the deafening sound of a shotgun blast. And I looked back, and to my surprise, my brother was standing, he was okay. And he looked over at me with crocodile tears in his eyes, and he was completely emulsified in a mixture of rock salt and bacon grease. He looked like a glazed donut. Now, I laughed for a few seconds, and don't judge me, I was 7, and this was some funny shit at that time. I dropped one of my tomatoes, I grabbed his arm, and we took off running back home through the woods, and we got home, and we had 3 tomatoes. And we laughed for hours and hours about how he's covered in bacon grease. And I gotta tell you, those were the best damn tomatoes I have ever eaten in my life. Now, oddly enough, our parents never found out about this incident. We weren't going to tell them. And the farmer never said anything either. I think subconsciously, we both called it a draw. We got to steal a few tomatoes, and he got to shoot my brother in the face with bacon. It's a win-win. Now, this experience was a changing point in my life. At that point, I realized that maybe I could turn this hunger into a good thing. Even at this early age, I understood that if I was going to escape this hell I was in, it was going to be up to me and nobody else. And I hungered to escape. My escape came at the age of 17. I knew I couldn't afford to go to college, so I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. Any military people out there? And during my nearly 12 years of service, I hungered for knowledge. I fed as much knowledge into this little brain of mine that I could possibly put in. I studied histories and books of great Marine Corps leaders like Dan Daly and Smedley Butler and the great Chesty Puller. Now, Chesty Puller once said that the enemy's in front of us, he's behind us, and he's on both sides of us. He can't get away now. Think about that. How profound is that? Now, not only were these men great leaders, but they also had a hunger in them as well. They had a hunger to teach people, to train people, to make them a better person than they were, and make them successful as well. And I hungered to lead by example like these men did. Now, I used the GI Bill to get a college education. Thank you, taxpayers. Because I knew that eventually I would have to leave the Marine Corps and join the civilian workforce. And without feeding on knowledge, more than likely I wouldn't be able to feed myself later on in life with a good job. Now, during the rest of my years and up until now, I've stayed hungry. I've learned that feeding my own personal growth helps me to be a more effective leader. And my past experiences help me be more empathetic to those who need a hand up. 2 years ago, I hired a personal trainer, a personal coach, to help me understand my past, but more importantly, to help me understand my future. And she's here right now, Beth. Thank you. Now, I would have never done this 5 years ago. But as I grow, so does my hunger. I hunger to be a better me every day. And my coach is always there to make sure I keep my focus on that goal. Sure, some days are bad and tough memories come to the surface, but you know what? That's all part of the personal growth process. However, staying hungry is my key to success, and it's also my key to helping others. I have a craving to build my own garden full of fruits and vegetables, and especially those big, juicy tomatoes. And this garden is going to be used to feed as many homeless veterans in this city right here of Las Vegas that it possibly can. Being a veteran myself, I know what it's like to adjust to the hardships of civilian life after you get out, especially after seeing a lot of horrific things in pretty bad places. But I also know what it's like to be hungry. And these men and women deserve a lot more than what we give them. Now, hunger isn't such a bad thing after all. In fact, it can be a good thing, as it has been for me. Feeding myself with knowledge and past experiences, positive people in the world around me, can be very addictive, but in a good way. I don't mind being addicted to life, nor do I mind being a glutton of knowledge. In fact, the more I take in and feed on, the hungrier I become. And I also believe that just as our bodies crave food, our mind craves knowledge as well. I stay hungry now, so I'll never, ever have to go hungry again. Thank you.
Okay, that would be a W, right? On the count of three. 1, 2, 3.
Wow.
Wow. Oh, you are a breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
You are a breath of fresh air. And if for no other reason, you and David are representing the trajectory and where we get to take this platform to.
Thank you.
And that feels good to my soul. Feels good to my soul. I love your presence. You have a powerful presence that really matches your bio, other than, I want some more rock band stuff, I saw it when you came out, by the way. I saw it. You have a powerful presence, and yet you disrupt the room when you started with such a vulnerable experience. Was that a great dichotomy? I mean, it's like from David reading your bio, like I had 100 things that you come out and say. None of them were of being a child that was hungry all the time. Thank you for that disruption. Thank you for that disruption.
You're welcome.
It was a great disruption. And I'm not going to spend any time on your story. I think that it was wonderfully done. I think that you dropped us into a moment in time. Did you love your parents?
Honestly, no.
Okay. So I need you to speak to that because we're your advocates now, so we're all raging. We're raging. Or we're raging. So that rage doesn't distract us, I need you to diffuse that. That's your responsibility. Does that make sense? Okay. So, and I respect you telling me the truth. And then let's manage how we say that, right? So I'm not telling you this story so that you wage an opinion or an emotion against my parents. I've spent a lifetime doing that. I'm telling you this so that you can see my journey and find yours in it. Woo. Right? So, do you guys see how because otherwise, when we fall in love with you, we don't want anything to hurt you. We don't like anybody that violated you. You know, in one of my books, I talk about being physically abused by my then fiance and how he picked me up and threw me 3 feet across the room. I knew when I told the story, I had to detach everyone from the emotion that they would feel, because every woman wanted to sit and kumbaya around pain with me, and every man wanted to find a can of kick-ass and serve it to this dude, right? And so the story could be distracting from the lesson if you don't give us permission to let it go, because we love you. Okay, does that make sense, you guys? Be responsible with all the parts of the story. So that's the only thing. The way you told the story, powerful, wonderful. I'm gonna skip past it. Okay? You have a very universal topic, hunger. We've all been hungry, not to the degree that you have. I'm honest to tell you, I haven't been. I thought I had until you explained yours. And what you did for me is you gave me a very clear distinction. Respectfully, you gave me a clear distinction, because I used to watch Olive Oil, Popeye and Olive Oil, and I wanted to be, what was his name, who bought a hamburger and paid him on Tuesday? Wimpy?
Wimpy.
But I was like, I want to eat a burger and pay him on Tuesday too. That was just the degree of my hunger. That wasn't like yours. So I love the way you described it. I love the ice picked in your head, because I've had a hunger headache. I don't know if it was like that. And then you gave me a timeline, 3 days. You'll have to say again midway, again I tell you, don't get consumed with the judgment of my parents. I've done that. Okay, bring me down again, because I'm mad again. Anybody hands up? Look at your audience who needed that unhook. I mean, because we love you. We're falling more in love with you every moment. And so you got to give us permission to breathe and not, go into that space of judgment. At the end, I want it, because again, I'm going to say this, I'm going to keep saying it. At the end, you got to turn it all out, and all will be about them. And then bring it back and land at you on the period, but that space between the comma, all is your story up into the comma, and then go out, 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 and then the period is back at me. Let me show you what that looks like. I went on, and I'm going to kind of pick up at the Army. Okay, I became
Marine Corps.
The Marine Corps. I apologize.
Whoa.
Hoorah! What's the what? All right. So, I begin to work on myself. I begin to work on the things that I have to work on to be a better man. I'm just going to make some stuff up that I'm sure you were dealing with. I begin to look at all parts of my life. That if I'm going to lead powerfully, then I need to also understand what I need to work on for me. So I hired a coach. And I realized that my hunger could never go anywhere. That it was the hunger that I felt crippled by, the hunger that I felt was debilitating as a child. If I applied that same hunger to my mind, to the desire to grow, to the desire to be a better man, that hunger can be my fuel, not my fortress. That hunger is what can drive me to being the best version of myself. So I ask you, Now I turn it. Remember, now, all about them. Watch the turn. Are you willing? And I do are you willing. You can phrase it in many ways. Are you willing to get hungry again? Are you willing to get hungry for the best relationship ever? So hungry that you're willing to not be caught up with being right all the time. You just want to be in harmony again. Start pushing their buttons. Are you willing? I charge you and I challenge you to be willing to get hungry again around your finances growing and exploding to the ceiling, that you're willing to get up a little earlier and use your time a bit more effective and confront or greet that person that you're nervous that they might not like your idea, they may not want to join you in business, and you greet them anyway because you're willing to be hungry again for a financial future that you've never seen. Are you willing to be hungry for health in such a way that you'll do one more crunch, 2 more squats? You're willing to get up early, be inconvenienced by how early you have to get up just to go work out. Are you willing? Are you willing to be hungry for great health to that degree? Are you willing to be hungry enough for your spiritual growth that you will spend time with yourself and within whatever your faith you call your God? And you'll ask and surrender, how can I be a better me? And then you sit still long enough to listen and hear the answer. Are you willing? Are you willing? I know my hunger. I've known hunger for a long time. And I'm just standing in front of you to introduce you again to what you might be hungry for. And to remember when you're hungry, because if you think you're full, you might stop feeding yourself. You drop the mic. Vinnie, you guys.
For Vinnie. I want you to sing.
That's that rock band.
All right. Last one.